The sixth house. Remembering the houses all relate to signs of the similar number. So sixth house goes with the sixth sign Virgo, which means that when you're assessing sixth house affairs, you want to look at the sixth house, you want to look at the influences on Virgo, and you also want to look at the influences on the karaka planets for the sixth house, which are Mars and Saturn. Now, the sixth house deals with health and service. It also deals with enemies. It shows how our capacity to integrate with our working environment, our day-to-day jobs, our menial jobs and routines. So if you've got a sixth house, you'll probably get along well in your day-to-day job. You won't be too frustrated by it. It also shows how you deal with the natural duties of life. Some people complain about how they have to do all these certain things to make things work. Well, life is a struggle. Well, it doesn't have to be a struggle, but there are things you have to do. You have to pay your bills, you have to eat a good diet, exercise, meditate, be nice to your neighbors, defend yourself if you need to. All these things that just go into making life worth living. They're just little things. And sometimes people get stressed out by these little things. They don't want to have anything to do with them. They want to sort of escape from them. And the sixth house will show if that's true. Particularly if we have, malefic planets in bad dignity in the sixth house, that'll cause more stress within the person's day-to-day life, day-to-day existence. Good planets in the sixth house, especially good malefic planets in the sixth house, that's excellent, because that shows you can deal with your enemies, you can deal with your problems. You're strong, essentially. Benefics in the sixth house, if they're in bad dignity, those are actually the worst, because when we have benefic planets in the sixth house, that'll show a person who expects things to be a little too easy, or they don't necessarily want to put the hard work required to make sixth house affairs work. And benefics in bad dignity will essentially make a person lazy. It's not always true, but if you watch and see planets in the sixth house, what you want there oftentimes are malefics in good dignity. That makes a person strong. If you've got benefics in good dignity, well, that's okay too, because that actually neutralizes a lot of problems if they're in good dignity. So things just get taken care of. But it's when benefic planets in bad dignity are in the sixth house, that's the worst, because then the person doesn't see what needs to be done, or they expect it to be too easy. The sixth house also deals with our health and our immune system. So how does our body deal with physical stress? How does our body deal with being alive? And planets in bad dignity in the sixth house can show what kinds of innate weaknesses we have in our body. If it's Mars in the sixth house in bad dignity, well, maybe the nervous system has some problems with it, or it needs some extra attention. If it's Venus, the digestive system, Mercury, the skin, the sun, the bones. So if you know what the planets represent, the systems they represent, that can show you where a person's going to need to put more attention. Jupiter can be the liver or the brain. It can show where a person needs to put more attention because the sixth house is the house of debts. And these are debts that we've probably brought over from past lifetimes. And so again, what is a debt? But a debt is something that you don't get a reward for, which means that you might have to keep working on your circulatory system, or you might have to keep working on keeping your digestive system healthy. And you don't really see any benefit. It just seems like a drudgery. But that's the way you work off a debt, essentially. And you keep working until it gets resolved, and then you start to see progress. So that's why the sixth house is said to deal with delays and obstacles, because you're putting attention towards it, but you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. But karmically, you are getting somewhere, especially if it's important to you, because you are paying off that debt. And again, it doesn't have to be health related. It can be, think of the house lords, and any house lord placed in that sixth house will show what area of life we might have some sort of karmic debt to pay off. Oftentimes when I see malefic planets in the sixth, there's difficulty with digestion. Mars can cause inflammation in the digestive system or surgery to the digestive system. Saturn can cause dryness or constipation to the digestive system. Bad Venus can cause difficulty absorbing nutrients. So there's a wealth of things that you can look at through the sixth house. But these will start getting you moving in the right direction. As I mentioned, the sixth house deals with enemies and competitors. Well, it's said that the sixth house deals with your enemies. So if you've got a positively influenced sixth house, well, then either you don't have to worry about enemies or you deal with them well. If you have negatively placed planets in the sixth house, well, then that's going to show that you are going to have some issues with enemies in regards to the type of planet that's there. The eighth house is said to deal with the battle. So whereas the sixth house is the enemy, the eighth house is the battle, which is why these two planets oftentimes deal with legal affairs, because those are a type of battle. And the 12th house is said to deal with the results of the enemies in the battle. So good planets and good dignity in the 12th can show that you benefit from the battle. Bad planets in the 12th can show that you don't, that you experience more losses. The expenses, because the 12th house is expenses, outweigh the effort that you put into it. So that's why it's a house of loss. But expenses can also pay off too, which is why having good planets in the 6th can be helpful. Now, 6th house, remember these keywords or these specific indications. It can show health issues, acute health issues. 8th house is more long-term health issues, but 6 is acute. Illness, disease, enemies, competitors, those people who are trying to get the same thing we are. And that's really why people are enemies, because they want something that you want, and so you have to fight for it in a sense. Jealous people. It shows our daily jobs. It can show service jobs. So people in the service industry can often have a influential 6th house. Oftentimes trainers, massage therapists, yoga teachers have 6th house. Why? Because they're actually improving the body, they're improving people's health. Food and restaurant business can be involved, caterers. Subordinates. Oftentimes I look at the 6th house to see what is the state of a person's employees, those people working for you. The 6th house is also representative of the maternal uncle, the medical profession. Nurses, doctors fall into this as well. The 6th house is indicative of cousins, and as I mentioned, debts and litigation. The Karaka planets, as we've talked about, is Mars and Saturn, so you want to assess Mars and Saturn too when you're looking at the 6th house. And the 6th house is a suffering house, a Dusthana house, as well as an Upachaya house. So what that means is that as you get older, as you mature, the areas of the 6th house you grow into. And that's what happens when you pay off your debts. As you mature, your debts are paid off, you start to see the results of that house. So they're difficult early in life. And the more you work at it, the more you strive, even though you're not getting the rewards that you think you should, eventually it turns into a house of increase where you can start to get gains if you put proper attention towards it. Again, that's why it's a Dusthana house, a house of suffering, as well as an Upachaya house, or a house of increase. With the 6th house, the Varga that you want to explore in line with this is the Trimsumsha, the 30th Varga, particularly the 6th Bhava cusp. That'll give you more insight into a person's health and a person's fated illnesses or the fatalities that they're going to experience in life.